Hi there. I'd like to welcome you to the long-awaited first episode of our Interview with the Experts series, where each episode will be focused on interviewing and sharing the stories and accomplishments of various experts in our community. Joining us for our first episode is Dr. Will Brooks, a retired firefighter who was a co-founder and president of the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Will has a doctorate in education centered around counseling psychology, and over the years he's primarily worked as an educator. He has also written about firefighters and critical incident stress, and has presented his findings to fire service organizations, as well as private and public sector organizations all across Canada. Will now serves as a director of the Nova Scotia Firefighters School and sits as a member of the Lunenburg Regional Fire and Emergency Services Association. He can often be seen driving around Lunenburg in one of his incredible antique fire trucks, and today he has kindly accepted our offer to share his story with us. That being said, please allow me to introduce you to Dr. Will Brooks, a firefighter who made history. Will, when did you first develop an interest in firefighting?
You know, to tell you the truth, it's really hard to remember. I have to go back almost 80 years to my origins, and I've thought about this often. When did I really become fully interested in fire engines? I can tell you several things that I look at now as kind of waypoints. This story here about old Jeff and the fire engine called Number 9 caught my attention as a kid, and I literally begged my dad to read it every night. So I grew up thinking about old Jeff and how he and the fire service dealt with a big fire in a community. As I got older, because I had a shirt-tail relative who was a fire chief in a small town, I got interested in sitting on the seats of fire engines. My dad used to take me into the fire station. I don't even remember when that started, but I'd sit, on the seat. I can almost smell the smell of gasoline and rubber and the old suction hoses and some of the canvas. That would have been when I was really young, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe. There's a photograph here of me sitting actually on a fire engine. It's a 1932 Ford that was in the little town that I eventually lived in. And that picture, I'm 5, but when I was 17, 18 and living in the community, I used to actually drive that to fires and used it. It was mainly a hose truck. It didn't have a pump on it really. But I was active in the fire department at that point. So almost as long as I can remember, I've been involved in some aspect of the fire service.
Speaking of your involvement in the fire service, you are a co-founder of the Fallen Firefighter Foundation and helped to create the Canadian Firefighter Memorial in Ottawa. When did you first become involved in the foundation's creation, and what is the story behind your involvement?
The thought struck me around 1997, I think, that we didn't have a proper memorial in Canada to represent firefighters who'd fallen in the line of duty. We did have a monument that was used with the full-time firefighters who belonged to the International Association of Firefighters, but the actual memorial and the monument is in Colorado Springs. And I got thinking, well, that's really not part of Canada, and Canadians, particularly the families of fallen, wouldn't typically be able to go down to Colorado Springs. Perhaps we should be thinking about a monument in Canada. And then when I thought further, it occurred to me that the volunteer firefighters, which make up the largest percentage of firefighters across the country, don't have any national monument at all. It seemed to me that we really needed to get going and build a national monument. Because I was living in Ottawa, that seemed to be a natural place to put the monument. Given that the police memorial is in Ottawa and many other monuments to the good works of people tend to be there, I continued to think that through and work with some friends of mine who were members of the Bytown Fire Brigade, in particular Georges Potvin, who'd been a firefighter in Ottawa for 33 years at that point, was retired, and my friend Bill Williams. As I shared those ideas with them, it became evident to me that not only did they think this was an idea, but as we talked further, we found other people who also felt it was a good idea. So we began putting together what we call the Canadian Firefighters Memorial Development League, which was the original name of the foundation. We had signs made, cards made, and we traveled around trying to talk up the idea, which went relatively well. However, it wasn't until 9/11 happened and people became much more focused on firefighters and the losses of firefighters that the large push came to develop a Canadian monument, even though there were no Canadian firefighters lost in that particular horrible, horrible event. From 2001 until 2003, we worked to continue developing the idea of the foundation, developing the governance structure and so forth. And as it so happens, a dear aunt of mine passed away and left me some money, which made it possible for me to then foot the bill for all the legal expenses and the incorporation and so forth and so on, which made sense because I knew that waiting for the government at that stage to help out would take a long, long time, and I felt that we just didn't have a long time to wait. As things happened, we were very fortunate. We received assistance through a company called the Canadian Badge and Uniform. We began to get some income from publications. We continued on with work across the country from British Columbia, where Aaron Feldman was involved, and all the way over to Newfoundland, where we had the involvement of a number of the people in the fire service there, back on the mainland, up north, and throughout the entire country. We began making contact and doing as much work as we possibly could. Finally, in 2003, we signed the incorporation documents, and the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation became a legal entity, and we had a board of directors. We began to meet, we began to pull things together, and by 2004, we staged our first annual ceremony, which was held on basically on the lawn of Parliament, in front of the Parliament buildings, and it was hosted by the City of Toronto. And since that time, there's been a ceremony every year since, until this year, when COVID has made it essential not to bring a group together. So there will be a virtual ceremony this year in September, which is the date of the annual memorial ceremony, and the Firefighters Remembrance Day, which is a government-sponsored holiday. One of the things of which I'm extremely proud is this book, which commemorates the actual development of the monument. And this really works beautifully to describe the Canadian Fire Service and all of the various facets. So the foundation includes every firefighter in whatever occupation, whether it's full-time, volunteer, whether it's an industrial firefighter, military firefighter, wildland firefighter, and so on. So that virtually every single firefighter in the country is a part of the Canadian Fallen Firefighters activity to remember those who lose their lives. This is the Canadian Fallen Firefighters logo, which when I look at it has great meaning to me, because in 2004, I went to Rome to do a course, teach a course in the Advanced Fire School, and I had this centerpiece designed with the name Canada on it so that people would recognize where it came from. Upon returning from that event, I then got added this ribbon, which the union had used to recognize fallen firefighters. And then we submitted this entire piece to the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, which adopted this as the national Canadian Fallen Firefighters insignia, and it's worn on the uniforms of firefighters now in their Class A uniforms most of the time, sometimes in other uniforms as well. This is a photograph of the first ceremony on Parliament Hill And then as we go through this, there's a remembrance of all of the firefighters throughout the country and the various ceremonies. This is the final monument as it looks. It's pretty well across the street from the War Museum and the Holocaust Memorial in Ottawa, and in a very wonderful spot that people can easily visit and spend some time just thinking about those who've given their lives for all of us. And this is the modern day firefighter who, since this is taken, has weathered and is now rather greenish rather than bronzish.
I'd like to give a huge thank you to Dr. Will Brooks for volunteering his time to share his story with us. If you want to hear more about Will, we'll be posting a video next week that will take a look at his collection and learn about the evolution of the fire trucks we know today. If you don't want to miss out, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking the bell so that you can be notified of whenever we post a new video. Thank you for watching, and please consider leaving us a like if you enjoyed the video. Take care and have a good day.